we are going to jump right in. So Regent Street, when we talk about Regent Street, what are we talking about? So we're really talking about the area, basically starts around the Monroe and Regent Street intersection, kind of flows all the way towards the West Wash Avenue, Regent Street area. Within this area, we've got, on either end, there's two major national sports venues that attract tons of attention. We've got a growing and emerging and blossoming healthcare district around Park Street. We've got lots of small business. We got lots of living and residential from students to seniors. On one side, and generally, it's campus. The other side, it's neighborhoods. And in the middle, when you think about it from Lake Mendota to the Beltline, there's really only two streets that go east-west. One is University or University/Johnson Pear, and the other is Regent. So it really serves a vital transportation role in this community as well. So this thing has a lot of public-facing roles. It's doing a lot of work. There's a lot of different users in this 1 mile stretch of roadway. But for a lot of years, I don't know, maybe 20, 30, 40 years, it's been pretty static. But that has changed significantly. So you see what some of the projects that happened before, between 2000, 2020, and then significant change since 2020. So market advancing, significant projects, especially in the housing realm and athletics and others in this corridor. And then there's so much more coming that is consistent with the plan and the vision in this area, and also future things that are imagined on the university campus. Not to mention a redo of the Regent Street as well as public spaces. So significant transformation. So this didn't just happen overnight. I know a lot of people, change happens like, oh, I can't believe how fast things change. This has been in the works a long time. The city took the lead, of course, in working with the neighborhood to develop a really solid plan in 2008, and that still holds true today. And taken the effort to advance a lot of things with putting the tools in place, whether it's the small cap TIF 43 that was done early after that, 21, a new TIF 48 was created that's really fueling the triangle reinvestment and also the upcoming street project on the corridor. But at the same time, early on, the Greenwich-Vilas Partnership was created, kind of a public-private partnership between neighborhood groups and others, and to advance this kind of small cap TIF, which was really organized around trying to convert small apartments to single family in the neighborhood. That work kind of came to a close, said, hey, we should be thinking about Regent Street corridor. An opportunity analysis was done at that time. What ways could we help implement the plan that existed? COVID hit, the group died, and then the Regent Street group, with new energy because projects were happening, came alive, and that's what exists today. And it's a big group. It went from like a dozen or 15 in the partnership to all of a sudden we've got 40 people coming to quarterly meetings to discuss, kind of share news with what's going on, but also think about its future. And it's this group, and I'm sure there's names on here that we forgot to put on, but it's really the brain trust. You see neighborhood leaders, city folks, university, small business, a lot of different folks, part of the brain trust that is bringing this forward. So how did this come about? So basically, the group, I think Aaron Williams had a great suggestion. He's in the discussion. He said, well, we don't really know what this thing is going to be when it grows up. So that's what the group really moved into, is this vision development, 2 vision work sessions with a small subset of folks from that big group. Did that, got together, we did what we do and helped to flesh things out, and then reviewed it twice with this larger Regent Street group, made all sorts of changes and edits and additions, and that's where we are today. Part of the impetus for this was really the fact that everybody knew it was transforming, but there didn't feel, and there's a plan in place, but I didn't really feel like there was a vision. What's the vibe going to be? What's the experience going to be? And was worried that every individual property owner would do their own thing, and at the end of the day, it would really fall short of kind of a unified vision. So that's what kind of drove the conversation. There was a lot of goals, things that people wanted to see happen, things that were not of interest. So, making sure there was a diversified housing mix, a really pedestrian-oriented street, a sense of place, that the game day experience was enhanced and became even more family friendly. People didn't really want to see this thing kind of become this placeless hodgepodge and become a fully student-oriented street. And we know the student market is huge. The housing market is huge, but I think there was a concern that, well, at the end of the day, could this be kind of lower State Street with cars? And I didn't think that was the vibe that people were necessarily looking for. And also, when the parking lots were a lot of our game day tailgating, when redevelopment happens, where does that experience go? Don't want to eliminate that. Don't want to cleanse the corridor of its little remaining old world vibe and kind of Greenbush history. And also, we can't treat this corridor just like we treat every other. It's got too many big assets and roles within the community. So this is kind of where we ended up. This is kind of in motion, just so you know, so it's not 100% canned, but and thinking about this from a transition where we are, kind of this disjointed, it's an auto corridor, really oriented towards daily services, but then kind of goes all in on the game day, to a really festive urban neighborhood that becomes a destination entertainment district that's vital every day of the year. And there was 4 real tenets of this vision. So one is that this really becomes this kind of festive urban neighborhood that's really vibrant all year round. So you got thousands of new residents that are going to be in this place that kind of fuel and housing units that are oriented to workforce, to students, health and social care in the area. You're going to have the existing uses that are already there. Also, there's going to be a whole new set of ground floor retail and other services that are here. And there was a real interest in kind of mirroring this idea of, we got healthcare and sports. Could there be this health, wellness, sports kind of vibe? And what could that mean, and what opportunities could come from that as kind of a vibe of the corridor? Second, that this is really a destination entertainment district. We know it plays out, on a big game day, but the thought is there is hundreds of events every day. When you look at that list in the lower left, from women's volleyball to men's and women's basketball and hockey and concerts and all the other tournaments and other activities and neighborhoods activities, how this district can really become, because I don't think we really think of it as an entertainment district, but that's the role it would really play long term. And it's from its space and place, the idea that this really becomes this eclectic, or continues to be a bit of an eclectic and kind of very strongly welcoming district. It should be vibrant, have a lot of energy, visually appealing, maybe different than a lot of our other kind of urban developing corridors. It might be more residential oriented if you go to Johnson Street or Monroe Street. This has a different role and should be viewed as differently. And it also has this huge history, really the Greenbush was the Ellis Island, of Madison, especially for our big immigrant communities, our Italian, Black, Jewish, and that really got rubbed out during urban renewal. And that's what happened in the Greenbush neighborhood. And there's kind of this, we think really intentionally and thoughtfully about this in the future. We have this super dynamic South and Park Street area, our most culturally and racially diverse part of our community. We have this Regent corridor in between, could really be the gateway between downtown, University, and Park Street, and also from Park Street to the University and downtown. So kind of bridging and helping weave that fabric together. There's a really opportunity there that people are trying to think about, how can that play out? Celebrating assets, the last, is really when the public improvements get done, when the private development is advancing, that we really find ways to honor the student, the healthcare focused heroes of the corridor, our love for bicycles, our Wisconsin spirit, and this diverse community. So if we can pile all those things together, and I know there's a lot of words on the screen, but this could be a place where everybody wins. There was also a lot of discussion about how can we take this corridor, and it's going to work best, function best, if we can focus residential markets and major activities in target areas. It's a long corridor with a bunch of different roles. Maybe on the west end, more game and event oriented, maybe student and athlete oriented living. In the middle, between major employment of the healthcare community and the thousands of employees in the campus area, maybe a little more workforce housing focus. And on the far east end, the Triangle and West Rail areas is more of an urban mixed income living with all the redevelopment that is posed to happen. That would, you know, when you think about it, what a fantastic place to have development intensity when you're across the street from the lake. You have healthcare right across the street, short distance to walk to downtown, neighborhood services, you know, a real opportunity to have a whole model of scales of different types of living. There's 6 key concepts to play out this kind of vision that we just described, and I'm going to rip through these pretty quick. This idea of courtyards. So when you think about it, a lot of the buildings are right up against the street, and the redevelopment is posed to do pretty close to that going forward. But can we create a little bit of relief, especially for major activities and time when there's major events going on? Almost creates little eddy. We're not talking about big courtyards, but just eddies, a little place to get a little relief. And maybe that's a great opportunity to explore how to celebrate those assets that are in this part of the community. Maybe Roger could, you know, do something with a bike theme corridor, courtyard in his space. Maybe the healthcare, as they advance their projects moving forward, that they could create some nook that celebrated the actions and efforts of what they do. Maybe there's an idea of around the Italian Workmen's Club, as that area potentially changes over time. Could we bring Ferboni's or another Italian deli in next to that, and everything that Sam's doing, and actually kind of create a small piece of energy around the historic Italian heritage? These are just 3 examples. There's all sorts of other ones, but we did just want to share a few ways that could be played out. The street itself. There was a lot of talk about, could we have the street be more adaptable during game days? So when it gets redesigned, you know, we know there's a lot of pressure on it. Could it spill out, but still have some maybe removable barriers that allowed traffic to still, and public safety vehicles to still flow through, but allow things to spill a bit out into the street? Is that an idea that can work? That was a question of the group. We have this really, when you look up and down, you see kind of the logos on the side here. A lot of people branding or celebrating kind of the Wisconsin brand. We think that should just keep rolling. You know, what a huge opportunity to make this place a really, truly bold Wisconsin experience, super memorable for people who come here, something we're all really proud of. All the ways that you can kind of experience the Wisconsin idea in place. Coal Center connection. We all know there's a major rail corridor here. The fence gets snipped, people crawl through to get through and back and forth. You know, long-term, that's probably not the best solution, especially as this area continues to densify. So when we think about not only the development that's happening, but how can we look at new ways to make connections? Maybe it's over the top, maybe it's underneath, but somehow we've got to solve that issue that connects the Triangle, everything south of here, with the Coal Center, Francis Street, and on to State Street, because there's just a block in this section. Destination Pedal District was of great interest. So what is this? Historically, development kind of butted up against railroad tracks. This corridor now has a major commuter, the Southwest Path, in it. How can development really organize itself and face onto that, spill out onto it, connect to it? Kind of like what you see in the Atwood neighborhood happening. But if you see this happen and there's already projects led by the private sector, but also, city making and advising suggestions of how these projects can connect, it could be really something that is kind of a draw unlike anything else in the city, if that was really this really urban pedal district where people really connected with one of our great modes of transportation. So that's another fun idea. And then finally, creating a world-class game day events experience. An idea on the western edge, kind of between the field house and the Regent apartment area. This is something that, who knows, it could be phased over time. But when you think about it, it's kind of at that nexus, that intersection between community, neighborhood, and the university. How could these things come together in a better way? It's kind of a goofy intersection. Uses aren't the greatest, and improvements are being made. But when you think about it, there's so much more opportunity here. So if you're kind of hovering over the south end zone, looking down at this site area, you see a variety of uses. You got the fire station, you got the credit union, UW's got police and ROTC, but and then there's kind of this wedge in the point, this kind of useless open space on the corner there with a bike path that runs through it that you kind of slip in the mud when you're trying to go to the game. Snow fences, and it's like right there. Anyway, 12 stories is what the max height limit in this area. And we know that in our growing community, whether it's on campus or off campus, that isn't going to stay that way forever. So this is just one way we talked about this thing coming to life. What if on game days that the street was closed from, Monroe Street was closed from the intersection there at Regent to Randall. You started to incorporate some of those uses onto the ground floor. You closed off the street. There's energy that kind of spills out, from Union South all the way to here. Major housing market. You could have mixed use housing, from athlete focus to market rate, affordable student. You can imagine the game day, ESPN showing up and, being there and actually having it set up for it. It could be one of the most dynamic game day experiences in the country. But on a normal day, it's just the streets wide open, great energy connects this area between the neighborhood and the university, and maybe Friday night movie nights on the big screen. So you've seen this movement. It was mentioned, Titletown, Deer District, certainly happening in the professional leagues. We're involved in other projects in the collegiate space. It's kind of transitioning to that. And I'll tell you, this place, because of the fabric of the neighborhood that exists and how the physical location of the field house and others knit into a neighborhood is so much different than many other places where they're creating it out of whole cloth in large scale parking lots and trying to create a place. So this is just such an opportunity. So that's it. You heard a little bit about how we got here, the vision, some key concepts to flesh it out, and looking forward to a panel discussion. So thank you.
Oh, no, we're fine. It's all good. You did drink my water, but that's okay. I'll just be up here parched, clear my throat, Rob. No, can I have your water? No, I'm kidding. No, thank you very much. Thank you again to Rob Gottschalk, principal with Vanderwall. He's going to continue on with our panel. We welcome up Megan Tuttle, who is the director of the City of Madison's Planning Division, and Sam Brown, owner of Leopold's, Fabiola's, and Greenbush. So welcome to the stage, both Sam and Megan. First question is, what are the key elements that make this vision transformative for the Regent Street corridor? I think let's start with Sam.
Okay, I think one of the things is that makes this especially exciting for someone like me who already is in business on the street is it celebrates a lot of the elements that already make Regent Street exciting. You know, it's incorporating that game day experience. It's incorporating all these assets that we already have on the street. You know, during a lot of this visioning that we did, we looked at we went, well, does this want to be a student district? Does it want to be a district for, you know, does this want to be workforce housing? Does this want to be an athletic district? And I think the solution that we kind of came to is, well, it actually wants to celebrate all parts of this. And I think that's what makes the neighborhood especially exciting and vibrant, and I'm glad it's reflected in the plan. I also think that improving the pedestrian infrastructure on the street is absolutely essential. Regent Street is a major thoroughfare for the city. It also has unbelievably busy pedestrian traffic, and it is, as a businessman who's dealt with a lot of accidents out in front of my store, it's a very dangerous pedestrian corridor. So making those alterations to make Regent Street easily accessible for pedestrians, I think, is absolutely essential.
Great. Well, first of all, good morning. For those of you that I haven't met yet, hello. I will just echo a lot of what Sam said. I think there's been a lot of work happening in this area, thinking about the future of the Regent Street corridor, both in the city-led visioning and now with this stakeholder-driven visioning. And I really think that the exciting pieces of this are just about how we can really leverage what is unique about this corridor. As I was listening to Rob talk about this again, just kept hearing unique, unique, unique come up over and over again, and just thinking about the ways that we can really lean into those identities. And the other thing that I think is really has the potential to be transformational here is thinking about balance. Again, hearing all of these different identities, hearing about all these different users, potential users, things that we want this corridor to be able to do within and for our community really is about balance. And I think that how we work to get all those things right will ultimately be transformational. Oh, there you go. That was all.
Perfect timing. Perfect. Actually, I'm going to go to the next question with I think Rob is an important question is, why is it important, and you talked about this, the city's vision as the government, right, so more public-led, to this stakeholder organization that's leading this vision. Why is it important that a group like the Regent Street group, which is a stakeholder organization, help lead this visioning effort?
Good question. I think because if there wasn't a really strong plan in place that the neighborhood was really involved in, I think it would be a little bit different story. But there's so many actors that are already at the table that own the properties or their businesses that they're going to be the ones within the framework of the already created plan that need to really step up and kind of work within the framework. So that's why I think it's starting with the major players is really important, because at the end of the day, the implementation, and that's if I was answering the first question, that's where I would have gone, is that let's have fun with this. We want the property owners, the developers, the architects, the designers, the small businesses to get creative and think about how they could play a creative role to make this happen in their own individual project. That's what excites me.
Well, you can see, I mean, Rob, you mentioned at the beginning, as part of this Regent Street group for now almost a dozen years, it started as an implementation of the city's very strong 2008 Regent Street visioning plan. And I think it's helping foreshadow some of the work that's going to be happening with the Near West area plan. So the next question would be for Megan. From that city planning perspective, how does the vision align with Madison's broader development goals? And what are the biggest opportunities and challenges with the Regent Street area from a planning perspective?
Yeah, I think as Rob was saying, this is really an opportunity to put a sharper vision or a sharper point on how we actually implement a lot of what's been talked about in this area for a long time and what has been envisioned in city plans, really helping us kind of inform the next wave of the Near West Plan, the upcoming downtown plan update, making sure that we're really setting the stage for how to continue to further support implementation of the things that we want to see in this area. I think some of the opportunities have to do with just how this area will evolve kind of collaboratively. The opportunity to think about both what's happening on the private redevelopment side or really the land use elements of this corridor, while we're also thinking about the transportation aspects. We've heard everyone talk about how important that synergy is. The city will be doing some work starting this year to re-envision Regent Street, and will be an opportunity for us to think not only about how we make sure that the street itself accommodates all the users and provides that balance in terms of the modes of transportation that need to come to and through that corridor, but also then how that creates that synergy and supports the types of things that we want to see on the edges of the street, that activation, how we see the mix of housing and other sort of dynamic commercial retail playful uses that will actually help this come to life. I think the opportunity here is that you've set, everyone in this room has set a really big vision for what all this corridor can do. Rob said it's 1 mile, and we've set a lot of really visionary goals for what can be achieved in that 1 mile. I think that's an opportunity. And ultimately, that will be part of its challenge. You know, how do we kind of pull together all the threads that help us to implement that vision? You know, starting with some of the things that the city will be looking at, I think one of the challenges will be just making sure that we have the sort of public and private resources aligned, specifically the investments that are needed in public infrastructure to support the build out of this vision. We know from recent city studies that we've got an undersized stormwater piece of stormwater infrastructure in this corridor. We've got some older water and sewer utilities. So how do we see that challenge as an opportunity to upgrade our public infrastructure and also then in turn support the investment in the corridor on the private side as well? Lots of things that we'll have to create balance around: the market, activity, you know, users, et cetera.
Absolutely. I think one of the key themes that I heard, Rob, in your presentation, this question's for Sam, is about a multi-use district, right? That has a, you know, both a best-in-class game day experience, but also works, you know, sort of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How do we ensure that we have that year-round space for everyone beyond just the game days? Sam, as someone that operates 3 businesses on the street, what do you think?
Well, I think it first begins with us kind of broadening our definition of what game day is on Regent Street. I think when we think about game day on Regent Street, it's hard not to think of Badger football Saturdays at Camp Randall. But the field house and the Cole Center is essentially vital to business on the street. And I think activating that corridor, the Francis Street corridor, as Rob laid out in this vision, is essential to bringing that Cole Center visitor over to Regent Street. I also think, you know, and this is something that the plan hits on, the vision hits on as well, is, you know, density is coming to Regent Street just as it's coming to everywhere in the city, and surface parking lots have been a key part of, you know, what the game day experience on Regent Street has been for the last 30, 40 years. And that experience is going to change. We've already seen that with the chapter development and Buckingham's Bar going away and the tailgating that happened there. So I think creating this exciting new game day district over with the Monroe and Regent Street corridor is kind of essential there. I also say that another exciting change that we're seeing here is also the UW bringing back concerts to Camp Randall is really a wonderful development to see a venue that we're currently only using, you know, 7 Saturdays in the fall be transformed into something that's bringing business to all of Madison is really wonderful.
Yeah, I think you actually, one part that I would add is you talked about volleyball and a few of these other usages. I don't think the average person understands how important volleyball and some of the things that happen at the field house is for that corridor. As someone that ran a restaurant and bar across the street, it is very important business. And we want to say a huge thanks to our friends at UW Athletics, certainly Chris McIntosh and Jason King, Mitchell Pinta, and Bridget Woodruff from our board who are here have been great partners in this exercise. Megan, one of the things that you brought up is the street, right, being redone. That's sort of the next thing that's happening. The city is hiring a contractor now to do community outreach and the engineering for the street here in 2025, with construction potentially in 27 or 28, depending on the timing of some other projects. But Sam brought this up as well, and I said it in the paper yesterday, it is the street that really doesn't work for anyone, right? It doesn't work for pedestrians, bikes, or cars. So how do we create, and this is a question for all of you, but certainly to Megan for the process part, this pedestrian-friendly environment, enhanced public plazas, and that strong sense of place? And what are the priorities for making that happen, particularly with this roadwork happening next?
Yeah, so this process will allow us to really think about how we make this space work better for everyone. Obviously, we'll be thinking about the different modes of transportation, but also what is that experience like where the edge of the street meets the edge of private development ultimately along this corridor. And so thinking particularly about two things. One is just really how does the roadway function? You saw Rob share an image, a concept about the road becoming more flexible, either in its physical allotment of space or in terms of how we use it day to day or at different times of the year. So I think ultimately we'll be exploring those really big picture questions as part of this city study around Regent Street. And I understand from talking with the folks at Transportation Engineering, we'll likely also include some opportunities for us to pilot concepts to see how they might work before we kind of finalize what our goals are for that street design. But then I think the other piece of this is about what we do on the other side of the street. I think many folks have said we want this to be a space that isn't just like all of the other areas of the city that are redeveloping. So really thinking about what are we doing on the private side of the street in the ground floors of buildings? How do we make sure that we're setting aside some of that space for those gathering places like Rob mentioned, or for that liveliness, that activity, that thing that pulls you in, that thing that creates the stickiness on the street, as my team likes to say. So really think about how those two things go hand in hand, public and private.
Rob, Sam, Rob? No, okay, no, all right, great. Moving along quickly then. You just nailed the answer. That was all, Megan. Sam, I think really importantly, from someone that has run and currently runs multiple businesses on the street, what excites you most as a business owner about this vision?
Well, I'd encourage you to take whatever I have to say with a grain of salt here. We've got real experts in this panel here, and I'm, just a restaurateur at the end of the day. I mean, hell, I was cleaning vomit out of a urinal 48 hours ago. So.
Oh, well, thank you for that visual. Yes.
So,
well, as someone that managed Hotel Red, I understand.
I don't know how much you want to put stock in my thoughts on this, but I've been working on Regent Street since I was 16. I've working at my father's pizzeria. All my businesses are on Regent Street. I love Regent Street, and I love the neighborhood. And one of the things that I think that makes Regent Street truly special and the Greenbush truly special is how varied the neighborhood is by age. It's a neighborhood of undergraduates. It's a neighborhood of grad students, young families, young professionals. We've got retirees. It is a neighborhood that mix adds tremendous vibrancy to the neighborhood. And one of the things that really excites me about this plan is that we've kind of taken contingency for all of those different groups. Because I think that it's lifelong residents of the Greenbush neighborhood who are very loyal to the businesses that are right there that are essential, and students add the vibrancy. When I opened up my Leopold's Books Bar Cafe on Regent Street, a couple weeks before I opened, I was really kicking myself, and I said, what were you thinking opening up on Regent Street? And what is kind of this campus neighborhood? Is this business going to be successful? And now looking back on it after all these years, I don't think I would have succeeded anywhere else in the city. I think that, Regent Street is this exciting mix where campus meets the neighborhood. And I'm so pleased that this plan preserves that special neighborhood.
Thank you for not going into more details about 48 hours ago. Cat litter works well. All right. It's facts. All right. Really important topic that's come up here, and I think it's hyper important for what happened, and Rob talked about it in his presentation about what happened in Greenbush a few years ago with urban renewal and just knocking down buildings and losing that history. How do we keep those historic institutions and those small businesses that do define the uniqueness with what Megan talked about of Regent Street's character? How can we support those legacy businesses and the street's proud history in, for Black Madisonians, for Jewish Madisonians, for Italian Madisonians, and so many others? How can we do that and continue to have and welcome new development?
I think this is a tremendous challenge, and this is something that I've discussed a lot with Joe Triplin, the president of the Italian Workmen's Club, which is, of the original Greenbush neighborhood, not the current Greenbush, but the original triangle, all that remains is the Italian Workmen's Club, the buildings adjacent to the Italian Workmen's Club, and a fire pit in Brittingham Park. And so how do you celebrate a neighborhood that's completely gone? And how do you do that in an authentic way? I mean, plaques and flags and commemoration is important, but, there's no life there. So I really think at the end of the day, this is kind of a question that comes up to private enterprise. And luckily, we're seeing some fantastic developments on the street. Roger Charlie partnering with the Papishes and restoring the train station for Harvey House, as well as the Butterbird development in one of his older buildings on Regent Street has been wonderful. Even his efforts to save Franco's shoe repair and turn that into a cool, change that. And then you also see it with the Stella's redevelopment, converting the old abandoned chiropractor's clinic into their new space. And then the Italian Workmen's Club being added to the National Register of Historic Places. So I think ultimately, in a lot of ways, preserving the traditions of the neighborhood is something that's really going to come down to private enterprise choosing to do so.
I think also we're going to need to be, and I know there's a startup of the Business Association from existing businesses, and I think we could be really intentional with between the spaces and places, but also what's going to come out of the public market and kind of food innovation and businesses and startups and small diverse businesses that might be in the South Park Street area, ensuring that there is intentional reach out, that there is opportunities here, and try to collaborate and find ways to create spaces and places so that there is a really diverse business mix that is, attracts and is welcoming to the entire community. I think that's going to be a really important ingredient in finding out techniques and approaches to doing that, to make it really have that spirit and be as welcoming and energetic and festive as possible.
I mean, it really does sit at the nexus of three major sort of business corridors, right? Park Street, Monroe Street, and that sort of State Street downtown area. It's right there. And how do we connect those? And as Ellie Westman-Chin, our board member, the president CEO of Destination Madison, said, the more we can invite to do more things around town, it's better for everybody. So last question here before we go is, what are the most immediate priorities? And what's the timeline that the community should expect on some of this work? Quickly from each of you.
So I'll quickly say, as Rob and Sam have said, a lot of the work that we're expecting here will probably come from the private side of this. But as far as city priorities go, I think solidifying the vision for Regent Street in terms of the public infrastructure will be one of the key priorities. Making sure that we're investing in and upgrading those vital utilities, but also setting the vision for the transportation infrastructure that will be the spine for this corridor will be a priority. And as you heard Jason say, later this year.
In their last group meeting, was it a month ago, less than a month ago? There was a really good suggestion as we were talking about, okay, how does the business and property owner and stakeholder group input into the design process? Because we know engineering project can get pretty tight. So there was a suggestion to take the different user groups that are in the corridor, from whether people that come to a game or come in for healthcare, or all the different aspects, and maybe have some focus groups in advance to think about what are the critical aspects that we should be thoughtful of, or the city should be thoughtful of, as they look to designing the street itself. So trying to get a little bit of a jump start, because we know sometimes these processes can be tight on a timeline. So that was another suggestion that came out of the group that I thought would be a really good, fruitful discussion.
Oh, you don't want the last word, Sam. All right. Well, huge thank you to Rob, Megan, and Sam for all your leadership on the Regent Street vision and things moving forward. And thank you to all of you for joining us today, and to our sponsors, Carlson, Black, O'Callahan, and Battenberg, Ho-Chunk Gaming Madison, JP Cullen, Lake Ridge Bank, Urban Land Interest, EUA, thank you very much, and the beautiful Edgewater Hotel. We appreciate everyone and your support of DMI in downtown. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you for joining us.